Well, Mandy, thank you for joining the show. Really appreciate you being here.
Thank you so much, Joseph, for having me.
We know you are a previous consular officer, and now you are a private practicing attorney. And what is it like going through this job transition?
Yeah, it definitely was a tough transition at first. As a consular officer, I was a foreign service officer, U.S. diplomat, and I think most people choose that career not just for the short term, not to do it for a couple of years. You think you're in it for life. So I think it was tough to give that up. But I think the interesting thing is transitioning into private practice and now being on the other side of the experience, helping foreign nationals, helping other immigration attorneys with the consular processing, helping people with visa interviews. It has actually, for me at least, been a very healing process because, when you're a consular officer, you tend to be very strict. You only have a few minutes to talk to foreign nationals who want to get a visa from you. And oftentimes, you can be in a bad mood because you interview hundreds of people a day. There's a lot of pressure on you from your management to be very efficient. And so I remember when I was a visa officer, I used to feel pretty terrible all the time, having to deny people's visas and feeling like I didn't understand their situations. And so now that I have sort of come around to working on the other side and being an immigration attorney and helping foreign nationals and helping immigration attorneys, I really love the work because I think there's a lot of educating people on the culture of consular officers. How do they get to that actual point of deciding to approve a visa? And what I tell a lot of attorneys is that this is actually not a legal process at all. It's very much a psychological process. And so your clients have to learn how to win over the visa officer in the 30 seconds to 3 minutes they have at their visa interview. And so it's my area of expertise, and it allows me to be much more effective in my role to help clients now succeed at the visa interview, especially if they've had a denial.
Absolutely. What advice would you give other consular officers who are working for the government, whether at USCIS, whether at the State Department? Maybe they want a career change, but they're scared, right? They work for the government for so long. They never work for private practice, but now you're on the other side. You have a thriving practice. What would you say to them?
Yeah, I think that it's always going to seem scarier than it actually is. I still have a lot of really good friends working in the Foreign Service, even people in USCIS that I know now. And so I'm always encouraging them to take that leap, especially if it's on their mind. There's no better time to start than now. And you have so much knowledge and expertise that will be helpful to so many people. And so I definitely recommend it. I think that it can be tough sometimes for officers who are not lawyers, just because there is that, unlicensed practice of law issue. But, sometimes law firms need consultants, they need good advice. So I just would highly recommend that you put your feelers out there and just see if there's something that piques your interest, because you definitely have a lot to offer.
What would you say has been the most challenging aspect of now running this private practice? And that's something that you didn't quite expect. And also, what is something that you really found you didn't expect to like, but you actually love?
That's such a good question. I think the most challenging thing is the marketing piece of it, because sometimes you have so much expertise and there are clients out there looking for your specific guidance and expertise, but you don't know how to find each other. And so when I first left the government and became an immigration attorney, I think one of the biggest mistakes I made was just taking on every kind of work. Whenever somebody came to me and said, I need help with this H-1B, or I need help with this marriage visa, I would go ahead and do it. And I would invest so much time and effort figuring out the process for that one visa type, and then to not have any other clients with that same situation. So I think, one good idea is to kind of niche down and find your area of expertise and become really, really good at that one thing you do. And also obviously leverage some social media, start a YouTube account, and then marketing, through your bar association. AILA for immigration attorneys is obviously amazing. I feel like most immigration attorneys work closely with other attorneys. And so I would recommend, new attorneys starting out and trying to figure out, what they're doing to do something similar.
What about what was surprising that you absolutely love compared to working for the State Department, for example?
I think what I really love is just, and this is so opposite of the State Department, is to really take the time to explain the process to someone. When I was working at the State Department, we were told over and over again, you don't have time, don't spend too much time on each case. 30 seconds is the most time you can give to someone, especially if you're at like a high volume post I worked at the US Embassy in Beijing, China for 2 years. I worked at the US Consulate in Guangzhou. I worked at the US Consulate in Hong Kong. I also spent 2 years in Mexico. So what I have really found myself enjoying in private practice is having the time to really explain to a client, like, well, this is why you were denied a visa. This is what happened behind the scenes. There's just like an endless number of topics that I think clients really want to know about so they have an understanding, instead of as a visa officer being like, okay, I don't have time to figure this out, so I have to just deny. Because anytime the visa officer has a doubt and your client is unable to resolve that doubt, the safest option for them is to just deny the visa. It's not because they don't qualify for the visa, it's just because they're not properly communicating with the visa officer.
What happens if a consular officer approves a visa, the client comes to the US, and later on, whether they change status, whether they do something illegal, whether they have fraud, what happens to that particular consular officer? Or what are the risks to the State Department if they approve a visa that they shouldn't have approved?
That is a really good question. And I think it really depends on what happens once that person gets to the US. Now, obviously, consular officers can't read a magic ball and figure out what this person is going to do illegally in the future. And so I think the State Department understands that. When I worked as a visa officer, for example, every month, they would have a list of people who were turned around at the border or turned around at the port of entry. And then they would have the CBP reports, and then they would kind of let you know, like, hey, you approved a visa for someone that got turned around by CBP, or they were not allowed entry. And those were always fascinating reports for the visa officer to read and be like, wow, I approved a visa for this person, but then apparently CBP saw something else. Or, they said they're going for a 2-week vacation, but apparently they showed up with 8 suitcases, and CBP obviously found that to be a problem and turned them around. And so I think that was always a very educational experience for visa officers. There is no repercussions for visa officers unless it's something more serious, like let's just say that this person has a visa ineligibility for a misrepresentation and they should not actually get another visa. However, this consular officer was working really quickly, didn't check their security clearances, and just went ahead and approved the visa. In that case, that information will get back to the State Department, and they will get something called a VLA violation. And if you get enough of those violations, then you could, not be permitted to be a consular officer anymore. But one important thing I would say, Joseph, is that consular officers move around quite a lot. They tend to only stay in one post for about 2 to 3 years. And so oftentimes when someone runs into an issue in the US and it comes back to the State Department, oftentimes that officer has already moved on. But every time you approve a visa, your initials do go on it, and they will be able to record which officer approved them, which I think is why so many officers are nervous about approving someone that they're just not sure about. And so much of the visa process is about helping the consular officer feel confident in your situation. Because if they don't feel confident, they're not going to approve your visa. It's much easier for them to just deny your visa.
Yeah. What about somebody who had prior denials? So the most common is maybe somebody already had 3 B1, B2 tourist visa denials. And then maybe they tried again for 2 F1 international student, and they got denied again by 5 other officers. Now, what can they do to try to overturn it? And the next consular officer, they will see all of that record. They will see all the previous denials. So, how can you help that officer to finally give this person a chance?
Yeah, I would say that there is always a chance that you can get approved, because most people are getting denied under the Section 214B visa denial, which just means, maybe they think you have immigrant intent, or they say that you have a lack of family ties. All of that can be overcome. My partner, Travis, another former visa officer and turned immigration attorney, we actually talk all the time about how he one time approved a student visa for someone who had been denied 9 times. But one thing that I would say is to make sure you're actually prepared for the interview, that you understand the culture of consular officers. My partner and I actually created an online course for visitor visas and for student visas, just because every single time we met with a client who would have some of these prior denials, I felt like we were saying the same things over and over again. And so our passion project a couple of years ago was to take all of this knowledge that we have to help students, help visitors that basically will walk you through how to fill out the DS-160, how to open your mouth and talk to the visa officer for the first time. And one other thing I will say, Joseph, is that, so many clients come to me and they say, well, I got denied, so then I decided to go to a different place. You got to be very careful about those decisions, because sometimes visa officers assume that you're just kind of going from place to place, hoping for an easier place to get a visa. They know all the tricks. They've seen everything. So you really want to make sure that you're doing things to build that credibility with the State Department and with the visa officer. Maybe it's even going back to the same post, but just having a better explanation. Then you have a good chance of succeeding.
Here's my last question, and this has been such a really good interview so far. How effective is LegalNet? A client's consulate interview gets denied, and maybe it's an inadmissibility, maybe it's a deportability. Now, one recourse is to take that factual situation and the legal situation, explain it to LegalNet, and see if you could get a response. And if the conclusion is the consular officer made a wrong decision on the issue of law, not fact, you take that and you go back to the consulate. But how often do you see that working? The consular officer says, whoopsie, I was mistaken. Let me re-adjudicate and I will approve.
Yeah, I have had a lot of success with LegalNet, but I think it's because that office really knows what they're doing. But it's a very nuanced process, because if you ever go to LegalNet with a question of mixed fact and law, then it's unlikely that they're going to get involved, because they're thinking, okay, well, this is the consular officer's authority that they applied Section 214B for a factual reason. The times where I've seen LegalNet be really effective is when the consular officer didn't understand the law and denied someone. Usually this is in either an employment-based visa scenario or possibly in a green card scenario. And then there's no fact issue in there. It's purely legal. Then I have seen a lot of success with LegalNet. Now, going to LegalNet can be very helpful for visa types that are not subject to immigrant intent, like 214B. If you have an L visa or an H-1B visa or a green card where immigrant intent is not an issue, then it's much more likely that you'll find success with LegalNet. Now, if you're only applying for a visitor visa or a student visa, where the visa officer can have a number of different reasons to deny your visa, even if LegalNet says, okay, I agree with you, they misunderstood the law here, you have to go back to the consulate and re-interview, then I think it's very likely that the officer says, but I have all of these other reasons. I don't think this person has ties. I don't think I trust this person. I kind of feel like they're not very serious about their studies. Then it's very easy for them to ignore LegalNet and just use that authority that they have.
Thank you so much, Mandy. And for anybody who's a practitioner who needs help during the consular process, feel free to reach out to her. She is an amazing practitioner. I hope a lot of people reach out to you. I know you help so many people, and I love seeing you at all the AILA conferences.
Thank you so much, Joseph, for having me.
Take care. Bye bye. 我们很多的听众最关心的问题是，现在在这个政府的情况下，中美之间有这么多的矛盾，现在应该申请签证吗？
我觉得还是得看一个人他的目的是什么，准备去美国做什么。因为虽然在新闻上呢是有很多很糟糕的这些新闻好像每天政府都在改变移民政策，但是呢，其实呢，在我的客户当中，我还是看到很多人都批准签证。当然，这是每个人都不一样，所以得看你能不能等，然后你到底准备就是长时间在美国是什么样的梦想，什么样的安排？因为还是有很多人能拿到签证的。